Why do we keep Shabbat? What is the Sabbath? Why do we keep and follow Torah? How do we keep Torah? Who is Yahusha? Who is Yahuah? Are Yahusha and Yahuah the same? What are the commandments that we follow today? Is there a difference between the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament? Are they one book? Or are they two books? All these questions and more are answered as we step into our new Q&A forum. Join us as we walk through the pages of the Father's Word, rightly dividing truth to answer burning questions vital to every believer.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're in a Q&A session. This is the part 2 of Spirit of the Law versus the Letter of the Law. Last week we were discussing how do we actually keep the law and how was it meant to be kept. And we saw that from the very beginning it was supposed to be kept by faith the whole time. We know that from the beginning the faith in the Messiah coming to die for them was always included in their walk in keeping the Torah. We also saw that you can only keep the Torah in your hearts. You cannot keep it outside of that. You cannot keep it by works. It is no longer keeping it. It's now doing the instructions with the best of your ability, which is not the way Yah wants us to keep it. What else did we we covered Micah 6:8 and how the Messiah referenced the three things that Yah requires, which is to do righteously, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. And we saw that there was certain aspects of the Torah that doesn't exist when you're keeping the law, when you're keeping the Torah, such as the death penalty, stoning and divorce and everything that's a penalty for something that was done, a transgression that was done. There's an option of mercy. There was an option of mercy, and we see that clearly because this is the same thing that Yah has revealed to Israel, in which Israel should have been wiped out many times, but Yah has chosen the option of mercy, which is one of the things he requires us to now extend to one another. We also talked about the sacrifice. Did we talk? We were talking about this on Wednesday, so I don't even know if we were even. Did we discuss?
No, I don't think we got into the sacrifice. I think that's what we wanted to get onto them. Yeah.
Okay. And there was also a few commandments that we were going to look at to see how it's actually kept, because one of the main question is, should we keep the 613 laws, and what's the difference between keeping the letter of the law and the spirit of the law? So that's a very big broad question. Go ahead, JP.
Oh, and then also with that is we also got into the conversation. I don't know if we concluded on it about Messiah, if Messiah added new laws, or because when we get to adultery and murder, those are two popular ones so that's also another. So those three things.
Yeah, we did talk about last week. We talked about the Messiah in Matthew chapter 5, and we saw that the Messiah didn't add any laws that was not already there. We even extended that conversation to talk about John the Baptist, to show how John the Baptist was trying to bring back the walking in the spirit of the law rather than people trying to do laws. What was happening was he tried to reveal that people were not righteous and that they needed to actually become righteous first. This was John the Baptist's message in Luke chapter 3 and Matthew chapter 3 also. We touched on that. And then we were about to go, we saw that John the Baptist, when he mentioned, when they were asking, what shall they do? Because he told them to show fruit acceptable for repentance, they asked what to do, and he basically explained the same thing the Messiah explained in his message, to love, to extend yourself for one another, to do righteously, for the soldiers to take exactly what they're owed and not take more, and not bear false witness, and all these things that's actually in the Torah. He was telling them to live it out, to become a righteous being by the power of Yah. So Then we saw Messiah has the same exact message. So it's not a new message outside of Moshe. We went back to Deuteronomy chapter 5 and saw Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 27 and 29, that Moses relayed to Yah that they said they were going to do everything that he said to do, and that Yah said that they spoke well, but he said, oh, that there was a heart in them that they would fear me and keep my commandments, that it may be well with them. So Yah, even though he heard their words and he said that their words was good, but they don't have a heart to fear me. And that's what was missing, the fear of Elohim, the faith, the belief. You can only fear something you believe is real, right? You fear what you believe is there. Like when kids have a fear of a monster in the closet, it's because they believe that something is actually there, bringing terror on them. So likewise, when we believe that we have a Yah that loves us and that also brings destruction on the wicked, we are now careful to not overstep our boundaries, even though we approach him in love and respect. We know that there's a consequence for our actions because he is real. And that is one of the major problems, that they don't fear him. This is why the commandments becomes a certain way to certain people. You know, the commandments become a finger pointing thing where you use the commandments to show how other people are not righteous, rather than allowing the law to be put in your heart and demonstrating the actual nature that Yah has. Nathaniel, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just going to ask, because last week I had some connection issues. I was and wasn't able to connect and hear all the message. Remember the comment that I had, then I got cut off, you know?
I remember.
Right. So you were saying last week that I had missed this, that he didn't add any new laws. You're saying that you went to Deuteronomy, but you said Matthew 5, 17 through 19 you're talking about, or was there somewhere else that you were talking about?
Yeah, well, Matthew 5, we touched a little bit on a few things he said in Matthew chapter 5. When he brought up adultery and he talked about looking at a woman with a twisted desire. And then we went back, and Leviticus talks about not looking at the nakedness of women, especially women in your family line and things like that, and observing the nakedness of women. We also saw that hatred. We talked a little bit about the city of refuge, and we saw that a man was cutting a tree with an axe, and his axe flew off and slew somebody. And Yah created the city of refuge so that way that innocent person, even though he killed someone by mistake, the words that was said in Leviticus was that he did not kill with hatred. He did not have hatred when this thing happened. So it's interesting how it correlated hatred with murder. And if you did something by mistake and someone actually died by that mistake, it wasn't called murder. That person was still innocent in Yah's eyes. So we even saw how the scripture talks about hatred as being murder, and how the enemy was a murderer from the beginning, not because he tried to kill Yah or kill Yahusha, but that he hated his everything about him. Are you there?
No, I'm listening to every word you're saying. Yeah. So basically, from Matthew 5, you know, he basically it just highlighted everything that was there, and if anything, kind of like help people tighten their belts. If anything, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because what was happening again, even in that that generation, was that people were steering away from the faith that Yah refers to as his. It's interesting how he calls following his commandments the faith also. So it's interesting that the faith, departing from the faith, means departing from his commandments.
Where was that at? I'm sorry. Where was that at? Yeah. The faith is departing from commandments. I agree with that, but where was that at?
Well, there's multiple aspects in scripture. Like, do you know where that verse is? I'm not sure if it's Timothy. If it's 1 Timothy chapter 4 or 1 John chapter 4, where it talks about seducing spirits and people heeding to doctrines of devils, and it said that people would depart from the faith listening to the doctrines of devils.
Yeah, I think that's Timothy. Yeah, okay, interesting. I'll go check that out. Thank you.
you can leave the faith by listening to different teachings, by accepting teachings that's contrary to Yah. So you depart from the faith when you leave the doctrines or the teachings of Yah, but you also enter into the faith when you accept the teaching, especially the teaching of the Messiah. So you enter the faith by accepting the teaching by faith. You also depart from the faith by tossing away certain teachings, especially foundational teachings, and following after other doctrines. JP, go ahead, brother.
Oh, wait, just one second, because I was just going to make a point.
I just want to give the scripture reference for that. What you said was 1 Timothy 4:1.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that because that's interesting that you bring that out. 1 Timothy 4:1, but the Ruach distinctly says in the latter times, where we are now, right? Some shall fall away from the faith, paying attention to misleading spirits and teachings of demons. But at the very end of that chapter, it says this: 1 Timothy 4:16, pay attention to yourself and to the teaching, or the doctrine. It'll say, King James. I like that word doctrine better, but pay attention to yourself and to the doctrine or to the teaching. Continue in them, for in so doing, this you shall save both yourself and those who hear you. So yeah, well, good. Thank you, brother. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you depart from the faith, a lot of times they interpret faith as some type of, just a belief in Yah's existence. But Yah don't need you to believe in his existence. He needs you to follow him. When you follow him by faith, that's what leads you to salvation. Not when you just know it in your mind. This is the incorrect perspective of the word faith, and this is what brings faith and works together again. When you start to understand that they're actually one thing, we don't have to say works when we say faith. It's included in the word. But when you look at faith like it's not a teaching or not a commandment, not his word, now you're just trying to make something up. That's why this walk, when we keep the commandments, is because we're walking in faith. We're now entering into the faith. And even Revelation says, here's the patience of the saints who keep the commandments of Yah and have the faith of Yahusha. So it's like the commandments is always included in the faith. But when you depart from the commandments, you also depart from the faith. You see, when you depart from the foundational teachings also, because we can go as farther away from the commandments and then try to make Yahuwah, a trinity or whatever it is. when you recreate foundational teachings, you are now changing the faith. Yah had mercy on us for allowing us, as we were reading his scriptures, allowing us to misunderstand and still extend his mercy until he was able to lead us to the right teachings. And when those things came, we had a choice to either reject or accept. This is the same thing that Moshe did with the Torah. He says, I lay before you life and death. It's the same thing. When we're talking about the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, I'm laying before you the spirit of the law. You reject it, you got cursing. You accept it, you get life. He never laid down for you actions for you to do something. He laid for you to believe something and walk it out, to walk out your faith in his teachings. That's what he was saying would lead you to blessings, not just doing a commandment. So Moshe was actually trying to reveal the righteousness of the law. He was trying to reveal the spirit of the law to them, but they did not accept the spirit of the law. Matter of fact, many of them died because they were trying to perform commandments without walking by faith. And this is what led them to their rebellion. This is what leads a lot of, our people now to rebellion, because many people don't walk it out by faith. Somebody had their hand up. I didn't look at the name.
I was just going to mention, I was hearing a conversation about exactly what you're talking about. And you had one side of the group that was sharing what you're sharing. Exactly that is the faith and the works aspect. The combination, how it goes together. There's no separation of it. And the teachings of today, we're hearing today, that just didn't start today, of course, that we're saying, okay, all they're saying is all you have to have is faith. You have to have faith. But then you get throughout the scriptures, talks about works, justified by works. Abraham justified by his works. what he went and did. So, but he believed, and so then you have to add it to your faith. So it's like, it's an amazing conversation, but I think there's so much revelation that comes out of it, especially.
But you know what's crazy? They are absolutely correct. It is only by faith. What they're misunderstanding is the meaning of faith. You can say the statement all day long. It's only about faith. It's not about works. Guess what? You're absolutely correct. But when you remove the commandments as being not a part of the faith, you are now creating a new faith. You see what I'm saying? So they're actually verbalizing correctly. What one side is doing is that they're verbalizing, they're trying to battle that idea constantly, when you don't have to battle a false idea. You just have to correct the view. It is correct. It is only faith, but faith includes his commandments, his entire word, actually. And what they're saying is that it doesn't include his law. You see what I'm saying? So that's a new faith. But it is only about faith. You just got to understand the terms, because the scripture uses the terms. It says only faith. So Paul, when he made that statement in Romans, only by faith alone, if you understood that he wasn't excluding the Torah, it would be okay. But because these people misinterpreted, now there's many people who feel like they got to emphasize on Torah, and then now people don't even know what they believe. They just switch up. Every single time somebody interprets the Torah different, they just switch up, because they got to make sure that they follow Torah. And if they don't follow Torah correctly, then something is wrong. So they got to no, you got to believe. And the Ruach will lead you into all truth. That's what it said. It didn't say the Ruach will lead you away from the truth. It said that he'll lead you into all truth. Rick, I saw you unmute yourself. Go ahead, brother. I think you can't raise your hand, right? You can't raise it.
Well, at this point, I think you guys are nailing some things pretty hard right here that are really good. But exactly what you said, faith without works is dead. What is the works that they're talking about? It should have been clear, faith without doing actions towards living righteous, which is obedience to the commandments. You can't have righteousness and just, and not being involving the commandments in somehow, because that's what it is. So it's the faith in what Messiah was teaching us, which is he was referring us right back to what the Father taught him, to obey the same commandments that he obeyed, his Father's commandments. He's just regurgitating the same thing. He's trying to tell us, but for some reason people don't connect what he's saying to the Torah. They disconnect it like it's a whole nother saying or a whole nother belief system, a whole nother set of commandments, which is not what he was telling us. He's redirecting us on how to walk this out, like you're saying, in the spirit of this. You have to have a different mindset, that your goal is now to walk in righteousness and walk towards him and his ways, and instead of trying to stay on the outside and do as little as possible and say, all I got to do is believe. Well, belief doesn't get you nowhere. I don't care if it's in this life or not. You can believe all you want, but if you don't put an action towards that belief, it's never become a reality. It's just going to remain a belief or a dream or whatever you want to call it, but faith without works is dead. So, you guys are right on, and that's a good point that we need to really hone in on, is what does faith really mean? We've done this study and we see that it's an action. Belief isn't just something you think about. It's actually something you do, you become. That's why he says you got to be a doer of the word, right? So that's the, you was having a hard time not saying that, but you're good. Go ahead.
No, that's good. I like that you said become. Like, you got to become righteous. He doesn't want you to just, when it says what does righteousness mean, and people say it means to do righteously or to do right things. That's not excluding the fact that Yah has first made you into that righteous person to do it. Many people think that it's just doing it as a separate thing from your transformation. No, it's just a result. It's a result of your transformation by the Ruach. And one thing people are doing, and this is probably why James had to reiterate this when he says, why you guys don't understand faith without works is dead. Paul didn't have to explain that so much, but he kept trying to emphasize on manifesting what you believe. If you believe it, then show it. If you believe it, why are you showing the opposite? That's what he was saying. And that it's like this works with everything, every aspect of our life. Is when we believe something, we see a manifestation of it. If we see a opposite manifestation, then we don't believe the person's words. We do this normally in our life. If I say I love you and I'm punching you in the face,
Yeah.
my actions are opposite to what I'm saying. So you leave me alone because I can say I love you all day long, but if I keep punching you in the face, you have to now think in your mind, wait, he probably doesn't know what love means. I'm getting out of here. So
You'll know them by their fruits. That's our topic for tomorrow, but it's exactly this is what you're saying. I mean, exactly right. You're going to exude that. That's what the fruits is going to come forth. You're going to bear what it is that you actually believe, right?
Right.
That should be that should be the fruit that's coming out. That should be the works that you're displaying, is his characteristics, that are now planted inside of you and that are now growing. Just like you and I, when we started out in this, we were harsh and we had our rough edges too, but he's been molding us and he's fine tuning us the more we understand him and his ways and what he expects of us and what all this stuff means. That's why we study to break these things down and find ourselves approved, right? You can't do something if you don't understand what's expected of you. So, that's why all this is so big. So I'll let you have the floor again. I just had to say that.
No, praise Yah. Go ahead, Brother Nathaniel.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about Revelation 22:14. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs under the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. So Revelation was written. They theorized probably around 94 AD or somewhere before or after, but still in the first century. The what we call the New Testament wasn't even compiled yet, and so when he's writing this, says, "Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs under the tree of life." Like, what is he talking about? Like, what commands is he talking about? In John 7:16, Yahusha answered them and said, "My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me." So we had talked about those 2 points. I just wanted to read those scriptures.
No, absolutely. Give me 1 second. I get my Bible out. Absolutely, I agree 100%. And this is the more that we keep this. Sometimes we get out of I'll say tune, because sometimes we get so caught up in executing certain things exactly the way we think they need to be executed, not recognizing that the Ruach is the gift that leads us into it, and for us to surrender to this, surrender our minds, surrender ourselves, our actions, in all of our ways, acknowledge him. When that occurs, then he's able to implant the Torah in us more, so we can demonstrate it correctly. Torah is a principle. It's a principle. So I want to point out, I'm trying to look for the commandment about the edges of your land. I believe it's in, I'm not sure, it's in Exodus 23. Is it?
Try Leviticus 19:9, maybe.
Leviticus.
There's also one in 23. There's also Leviticus 23 also.
Yeah. So Leviticus 23. Let's go to Leviticus 23. All right, give me 1 second. All right. So Leviticus 23, looking at verse 22. Let's look at verse 22. So let's use this commandment as one of the examples, right? It says in Leviticus 23, verse 22. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not make clean riddance of the corners of your field. When you reap, neither shall you gather any gleaning of your harvest. You shall leave them unto the poor and to the foreigner. I am Yahuah, your Elohim. So it's interesting because there's certain commandments that we understand as a principle, but then there's other commandments that we just throw in the pile of we can't do it now. Does all of us have land? Does all of us have
No.
land?
Well, we might have a little, maybe some of us, if we live in an apartment, we have a little, porch maybe. Some have a house with a front yard. Some have three,
I do not. I do not.
and some of us don't have any.
Right. So let's look at this commandment. Okay. Oh, I don't have land. One, it's not telling you how much land you have, so it's not based off of how much you got. It's just a principle. When I reap it for myself, when I receive it for myself, I need to make sure that there's some for, what does it say? For the poor and for the stranger. For the poor and for the stranger. So what will we say? I don't have a field, so that law does not apply to me. Is this the way he wants us to read the Torah? If he talks to someone and says, "What does the Torah say?" and I want to keep this command in mind. Let's go to, I'm not sure if it's Luke chapter 12, where he was talking to the scribe and asked, he said, "How readest thou?" I know Nate is here, so I'm just saying and see if he can find it for me or anybody. I think it's in Luke chapter 12.
What's it pertaining to? How readest thou what?
Where he says, when you read the law, he says, when you look at the law, how readest thou? What do you see? And then he says, I see, and then he quoted the Shema. I see, love Yah with all your heart, your soul. Does anybody know where that is? Anybody could do a search. We got to be active, guys. We're working together.
What are you exactly looking for in Deuteronomy? Is it the one in Deuteronomy?
No, it's in the Gospels. He was talking to one of the scribes, and he says, when you look at the law, how do you read it?
Oh, see, yeah, the lawyer.
Yeah.
Luke 10:26, perhaps.
Luke 10:26. Let's take a look. Yes.
26 and 27.
Luke 10:26. Who's that? Somebody's breaking up bad. All right. So it says, verse 25, right? We're going to keep this commandment in Leviticus 23 in mind. It says in verse 25, and behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said, what do you read? Or what is written in the Torah? How do you read it? How do you understand it? He says, and he answered and said, you shall love Yah, your Elohim, with all your heart, your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said, you have answered right. This do, and you shall live. So we see that the lawyer was looking at the Torah, right? And when he asked him, when you read the Torah, because he's a lawyer, that's what he does. He studies the Torah. When you read the Torah, what do you see? And he said, I see love Yah and love your neighbor, right? So if we go back to the Torah and we read these principles, when we read it to understand it, how do they apply to loving Yah or loving my neighbor? This is the principle that he's trying to instill in us. He's not saying only if you have land that you leave some for the poor and for the foreigner. He says when you reap in your land, you leave some for the poor and for the foreigner. That principle is not restricted to you having land. You don't say that I can't keep that commandment because I don't have land. Because it's asking you to take care of the poor and of the foreigners. You see what I'm saying? So when we're looking at the instructions in Torah, it's not saying, oh, okay, let me look at the surface of what it's saying. He's using these things as an example to a people who was an agriculture type of people. If they didn't have any land, he would have given them a different example as to how to execute that principle. This is how all the instructions in Torah actually works, except for symbolic references. Symbolic references has to be specific because they have to point us to Messiah, or they have to point us to something specific that has to fulfill. So we have to understand that there's a difference, a big difference in the Torah of instructions that are principles and instructions that point us directly to a specific thing. Let me open this up. Go ahead, Mike, then Nathaniel, then Sister Lisa. Mike? Is Mike still there? Oh, Mike, you're muted.
Am I breaking up?
Well, you was muted. It sounds okay. Go ahead. I think you're muted again.
He just left.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Nate, and then Sister Lisa.
I was just going to mention on that point, that seemed to me kind of like the spirit of the law, letter of the law kind of aspect. Like the letter of the law says, like, let's just say, you don't kill your neighbor with your sword. And you're like, well, it says don't kill my neighbor with my sword, but it doesn't say I can't kill him with my hammer. You know what I mean? And then you're twisting stuff around. It's like, yeah, well, so sometimes like, I got what you're saying. That's a really good point. I'm gonna put that into a special memory file there, because I think that's something that everyone should remember. So like if it says don't glean or leave something for the poor and for the widow or the stranger, then it's basically saying that whatever you're doing in your reaping, in your harvest, whether you have a field or not, then you should leave some for the widow and for the stranger. That's what it says, to take care of it. Thank you for that. That's good.
Absolutely, and the principles just continue to grow. One of the aspects of these principles is that Yah wants us to demonstrate love towards Yah and love towards one another. How does these principles allow us to execute that? The letter of the law versus the spirit of the law was the main problem between Messiah and the Pharisees and Sadducees. They were creating traditions that were just added surface executions. Don't carry your mat on a Shabbat. Just more of what they already thought the Torah was saying. The Torah wasn't talking about any type of like if I work. He wasn't just saying every single aspect of work. I think there was even a commandment. I'm not sure if this is a new one, but this is definitely a Talmudic tradition, just like as the Pharisees had, is that if they spit, they can't spit on the grass because is counted for agriculture, because your spit would allow the grass to receive nutrients to grow. They don't turn on the light. They don't press elevator buttons. It's like there's a whole bunch of things that's basically surface. It has nothing to do with faith. It has nothing to do with how you walk or what it is in your mind. Where are you placing your mind? Yah wants your mind completely devoted to him. He wants your dedication. He wants your energy, the energy that you use to work. He wants it you used for him. He wants the mind that you use to accomplish all your tasks, all these things. He wants it redirected to him. This is what the focus is. This is what the main focus is. I could be sitting down, and just from what I open my mouth and say and where I put my mind, I can break the Shabbat. It has nothing to do with me turning on and off the TV, even though that's a part of it, because you don't want your mind to be redirected away from Yah into these TV shows on Shabbat. So you stop everything as what the word Shabbat means, and you redirect to him. You redirect to him. It doesn't mean stop him, stop everything you do for him. Just stop the things that pertains to your deviation. We can't give him 100% every single day. We can give him 100% in walking it out in our everyday actions. We can give 100% in keeping his commandments in our everyday actions, but we can't redirect our mind completely to Yah when we have to go to work or when we have to do other things. So when we come on Shabbat, is to redirect all of our energy to him. Now, you can definitely break that. Sitting down, Bible open, thinking about crap that you shouldn't think about. I don't want to mention certain things. So, Yah wants us to have a deeper view of his law. He wants us to have a deeper view. The word spirit, or the word ruach also means mind. It also means mind. If you look up the word ruach, it means breath, wind. It also means mind. So a lot of times when it's talking about the mind, it uses the word spirit to emphasize on mind, on the mind state of a person. You shall not have the spirit of fear, but of a power and of a sound mind. So the spirit of fear was talking about the mind state, a fearful mind state. You will not have a fearful mind state. Love casts out all fear from your mind, and it gives you a sound mind. You see what I'm saying? So when we're looking at his Torah, the spirit of the law, or the mindset of the Torah, is what he's putting in your mind, because that's the covenant. It says, I will write my law in your mind. So you have to understand what principle he wants you to get, so it can be in your mind and transform your nature. Romans chapter 12, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Ephesians chapter 4, be renewed in the spirit of your mind. This is what the whole purpose of the Ruach is, to bring the Torah, bring the principles of the Torah into your mind so it can transform your nature, your character, not so you can do a couple of stuff. Go ahead, Sister Lisa.
Just kind of going back to the gleaning of the field, since none of us really are farmers. In Matthew 25, 35 through 39, where it talks about how, let me just kind of go to it. It's on my phone. So, for when I was hungry, you gave me meat. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. Naked, you clothed me. So reading the rest of it, that's kind of what I feel it's talking about, the spirit of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that was my only
Absolutely.
point.
It's the mind state of having a concern for your. It didn't even say your brother. It said the foreigner, the poor. It's easy to love your brother. That's what Messiah was also bringing out, the principle. It's easy to love your brother, but what about a foreigner? What about poor individuals that you don't know? What about your enemies? The principle is to extend what was extended to us. When you look through Leviticus 23, the harvest is based off of the blessing that Yah has given. So what we're doing is Yah is blessing our harvest, and we're extending our harvest to those less fortunate. How much we can still do that today? Yah still wants us to have that characteristic in us today, in which whatever Yah extends towards us, we extend towards those less fortunate as well. There's so many things where we just place it on, other things. Oh, we can't do that because of this. Oh, we can't do that because of that. We can't do that because of this. Instead of asking, Yah, how do I apply this to me? What principle should I accept so I can transform my walk with you, so I can demonstrate more of what your word says, rather than turning to a page and telling somebody, oh, no, that's gone because we can't do that right now. We got to wait until Messiah comes back so we could get some land. No, because Yah tells you to keep his commandments now. Doesn't tell you to wait till you get land to keep his commandments. But yeah, definitely, sister. That is the principles is all through Messiah's ministry as well. He's teaching the spirit of the law. Same thing Moshe tried to teach. Same thing that the prophets taught. When you look at through the prophets also taught the spirit of the law, trying to restore Israel back, but they also killed the prophets as well. This is what Messiah said, that they killed the prophets. Why? Because they were trying to redirect them from just doing surface things and adding foolish traditions to Yah's word, and redirect them back to the spirit of the law, or to the mindset of the Torah correctly. But they didn't listen. Even in 1 Samuel chapter 15, where it talks about idolatry and witchcraft. People look at witchcraft and they look at all of these things, and it says rebellion is like witchcraft. People look at idolatry and they're like, oh, look at all these statues, but it says stubbornness is idolatry. Samuel said this, or Yah told Samuel this. So we saw that the spirit of the law has always existed. This is not a new thing when Messiah came. So we have to make sure that we're allowing his Ruach to lead us into the full understanding of the principle inside each instruction. Or we're just going to be trying to do stuff that we don't really understand fully. Go ahead, Emeka, and then Nate.
Yeah, you brought out a very interesting perspective, when you talked about the spirit and the mind, taking on the mind of Yahusha. Scripture says, let this mind be in you that was also in Yahusha, and so when you really operate from that point of view, especially when you look at the scriptures, you see one of the most things that Yahusha stressed was, we see him stress being obedient, but we also see him stress producing good fruit, because if you know Yah's character, you know Yah's character, then and you understand his character, then you operate according to Yah's character. You operate according to the way you know Yah to be. And that is something that a lot of people don't understand these days, is his character. They don't understand he never changes. His character never changes. The aspects of him never change. And that's why Yahusha knew that, which is why after he, let's say when he healed the man at the well, when he healed the man trying to get into the pool, what did he tell the man after? He said, yo, go and sin no more. Why? Because he knew Yah's character. He had the mind of knowing Yah's character. You know, he knew exactly what Yah was like. He told a woman after she was almost about to get stoned, he told her, "Hey, go and sin no more." Why? Because he knew what would happen. He said, and he specifically said that uh oh, I just lost my train of thought. He specifically said to her, you know, don't sin no more before a worse thing happen. You know, because he knows Yah's character, and he knows Yah punishes sin. You know, Yah punishes sin. He punishes it like we're not escaping it. Because if all of a sudden we were just allowed to escape sin, that would mean that Yah changed, you know, and he no longer punishes. Now, he may apply his mercy to you and give you time to come to the truth and time to come to him if he knows that's going to happen. But if he chooses to, you know, or he knows, let's say that you won't repent, Yah can punish you any way. He can choose to have mercy on you and give you time, or he can choose to punish you for the sins that you commit. A lot of people get punished for the sins they commit. You know, you go out stealing, you know, you go out doing killing, murdering. A lot of people receive those punishments, you know, and Yah doesn't wait. And so when you know Yah's character, you know, from the beginning, Yah told us to produce good fruit. He said, "Be fruitful," you know, and so when you know Yah's character, you really operate according to Yah's character, according to his word, knowing what he said, that if you obey my word, you know, I will be your Elohim, you know, and you shall be my people. And I think Yahusha really just understood that. So when we talk about the fruit, we talk about the spirit of the law, you know it's, you know, justice, judgment, you know, uh, mercy, belief. Like it's an even balance of love, you know, and pretty much what makes up Yah's character. Yah is literally the spirit of the law, and we're to take on his spirit because we're made in his image and in his likeness. So we are to take on his spirit. You know, if if I had a son and my son was constantly disobedient and I never put the belt to his butt, you know, like that's not Yah's character, because I could be merciful at times, but then there's some times where I'm gonna need to put the belt to the butt and say, hey, look, you need to stop doing this, you know, in correction. So,
Breaking
you
up
know,
bad.
people, oh man,
But I can still, well, I don't know about everyone else. I can still hear what you're saying. It's just robotic.
okay,
But I can still hear what you're
okay, yeah, okay. Let me see. If I throw my Wi-Fi on, it'll probably come in a lot clearer.
saying. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So you know,
yeah,
yeah. Basically, is that better?
it was better. It was, yeah. Hello? Did you mute yourself? Mecca, you muted yourself? Am I muted? Can anybody hear me?
Nah, he turned on that Wi-Fi. That's what happened.
Oh, it's just
5G.
5G.
his Wi-Fi kicked. All right. All right.
It said he just left, so I don't know where he went.
Go ahead, Nate.
I was just going to mention, because we were talking about the neighbor. You know, that scripture that you pulled up earlier, Luke 10:26, right? The how readest thou, and then he talks about that, right? And then do this and you shall live, verse 28, and then the question asked, just the very next verse, verse 29, that he asks them, you know, who is my neighbor, you know, and then that's when he goes into the Samaritan man, right? Someone that they like wouldn't even talk to, right? That's what in John 4, like she like Yahusha's talking to her, the woman at the well, and she's like, how is it that you, a Yehudi, is talking to me, a Samaritan woman, you know? And so she was amazed that he was even talking to her. And so, like, you know, we a lot of people probably know the animosity between those two that racial divide. And so he says, who's the neighbor? The neighbor is this Samaritan man. It's the neighbor is your brother, even the Samaritan man, even the person that you wouldn't expect. So I just was going to highlight that point there.
Right. And I think that most principles have it, extending yourself not only to your brethren. I think a lot of times it was a given. It was a given. That's why even Messiah says, love your enemies. He says, it's not a reward to love somebody that loves you, but to love somebody that hates you. Now you're extending yourself. You're extending yourself the way that Yah would extend himself. Now it's going to be acceptable in Yah's eyes. You love somebody that loves you, Yah's not going to be like, oh, you're doing so much, by loving this man. No, is when you love someone that hates you, now you need his strength to now extend that love constantly to this person that hates. It's the same thing he did while we were his enemies. Messiah died. While we were yet sinners, Messiah died. Y'all love the world. The world hates him. That's what Messiah said. The world hates me, but he died. So it's like that's the extension of love that he's referring to. So when you're saying, who is my neighbor, you can't just extend it to your brethren who feels obligation because you're their brethren, but to extend it to people that hate you. Now you're doing something outside of the world's character. That's one of the major things that Yah wants us to be different from what the world presents as love or as righteous or anything. Go ahead, Wes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a verse out there. It's let me see, pull it back up. Sorry, Psalms 41 verse 1, and the only reason why I'm bringing this up because I started to do some searches about the poor and the widows, and I noticed a pattern where it's the Father is always bringing us back to taking care of the poor, to consider the poor, to give to the poor. So I just wanted to read Psalms 41 verse 1 where it says, blessed is he that considereth the poor, Yahuah will deliver him in the time of trouble. So it shows the pattern of this is what he wants. This is the whole purpose of, let's say, Leviticus 23 or Deuteronomy, I think it was Deuteronomy 24, where it brings up again giving to the poor. The whole point is loving thy brother, thy neighbor, or considering the poor. So
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Matter of fact, interesting thing about extending yourself out for others is Isaiah 58 talks about fasting. And then he expresses that this is the fast that he desires. And it talks about not only walking uprightly but extending yourself, pouring yourself out for those less fortunate, covering the naked. Same thing like Sister Lisa brought up about the least to these, doing what you've done to the least of them is what you've done unto me. So we have to understand that these principles are it's just talking about a field and not cutting the edges. But if you're not looking at it correctly, you're not going to see it. You're just going to toss it into the bucket of we can't do those laws, and we gotta not do that anymore. Let's see. Okay, go ahead, Mike, and then Brother Donnie.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I just want to touch on what you were talking about, loving thy neighbor, because excuse me, like define neighbor as just brother, and therefore exclude the stranger and not do anything for strangers or Gentile, whatever they want to say. But at the same time, I know we tend to go to the other side of the extreme, which I know I personally need to kind of get the balance correct myself, because there is still a distinction between the way that we feel towards our brothers in the faith and then someone who's not in the faith. But the idea of love, like Scripture defines Old and New Testament the same. It defines love as something that you're doing for somebody For instance, it tells that the husband loves a wife before her. Messiah says that he loved the world so much that he gave his life. It's something that he's doing. And then even us loving Yah, it says that anyone that says that they love Yah but does not keep his commandments, in other words, do the things that he says, then he is a liar. So the idea of loving your neighbor, it's the aspect of actually doing these things for them. So you are clothing them when they're cold, you're feeding them when they're hungry. But it's not this emotional idea of what we look at love, here in America, which is like this emotional thing where like you have to feel the same way about the wicked or about your enemy that you would your brother. No, you love them the same, which is to feed them, to clothe them, to do the things that Yah says to do, the same things that Messiah does for us because he loves us. But it's not the same as the way that we see Paul always desiring to be with his brothers. We're not desiring to be with people doing wickedness, but when we come to their presence, we are going to treat them with respect. We are going to show them love through our actions. So I just wanted to kind of like bring a balance there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Scripture talks about Yah's people preferring one another. There's always going to be a higher level, not of respect, is not of love because it comes from Yah, but there's a higher level of vulnerability towards the fellow believers. There's a I trust that you have the same standard
Intimacy.
towards there's a closeness that you have with others who have the same walk as you. So there's this level of trust that I'm hoping that you stand by the same instruction as I do, but when others come in or getting involved, you still extend that same love, that same respect. And it doesn't mean that you have to be extremely vulnerable to strangers. It just means that you have to be concerned about their necessities the way that we are concerned about one another's necessities, and even more. So if and it's interesting because sometimes it has nothing to do about feeling also, because sometimes you just need to be concerned about the other person's well-being without being like, and we're gonna be together forever and be best friends. You don't have to do that to be concerned that this person doesn't die, or that this person is not hungry. It takes us back to the story of Elisha and that army, where Yah blinded this army, and the Israelites were going to kill this army because Yah blinded them. And Elisha said, no, lead them over here. And then when they led them to a different place, Yah opened up their eyes. And then when they said, let's slaughter them, Elisha said, no, give them food and drink and send them home. You see what I'm saying? It's not a matter of, oh, I love these
Beautiful.
Philistines. I love these Philistines. Let's give them food and drink. It's like, no, give them food and drink so they can make it home. You see what I'm saying? So we have to understand the principle is how we react. It's how we do things. It's not how we feel. It's what we are. Like what Brother Rick was saying earlier. So when Yah puts his law in us, we become righteous. We become righteous and we demonstrate his law in principle. You don't wait till you have a field to demonstrate taking care of the poor and the foreigner. We don't have to wait till Shabbat to when we get home from work to rest our minds and give it to Yah every moment that we can during every other day. There has to be that principle that applies everywhere else instead of just the surface instruction. Go ahead, Brother Donnie.
Shalom, Akuti, and Brohim. Thank you so much for viewing this video. We hope it was helpful to your walk in the truth. Remember to always search the scriptures on your own, to study Abba's word and show yourself approved, according to 2 Timothy 2:15. We invite you to study with us. To join us in a live study, just go to our website at assemblyofyahuah.com and click the Join Us tab. We have something available Wednesday through Saturday of every week. If you've been Baruch or blessed by this video today or any other study, we encourage you to go to the Giving tab on our website. Our elders all have their own ways of income, so none of the giving or proceeds go to them. Instead, it goes to biblical assembly needs. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any new videos. We sincerely pray that Abba continues to direct your path as you acknowledge Him in all your ways. Much avaha and again shalom.